Hello and welcome into BTN's Take 10 podcast. This is Alex Roux, BTN, and we are back on the Take 10 podcast after a week-long hiatus or break or whatever you want to call it. Had a guest fall through that week, so decided to pack it in and come back better than ever this week. And we do have a great show for you with a couple of great guests coming up. The first guest is a BTN reporter and anchor, and it's actually long overdue that I got her on the show. I can't believe it's taken this long. And it is Elise Menaker. So if you've watched pretty much any Big Ten football Saturday the last couple of years, or any of our some of our BTN women's sports like softball, where she's an analyst, you've definitely seen Elise, or followed Big Ten Network social media channels where she does her Big Ten's Got Talent segment. You're definitely familiar with her. And Elise and I get into her background in sports media, her path to BTN, kind of the same blueprint that I try to do with all sports media personalities that join the show, and really find out their story and figure out what led them to their current position. So get into that with Elise, talk some Big Ten football, or at least the experience of covering Big Ten football, because she gets to one game a week, and kind of the protocol and the experience behind getting to a campus every week and interacting with the crew and interacting with students and coaches and athletes and all that for everything that goes into a big production like Football Saturday. So great discussion with Elise coming up. And then after that, we have Harold Shelton back on the show, as he is most weeks during football and basketball season, to get behind the numbers of Big Ten sports. This week, obviously, we talk a lot of Big Ten football. Soon we'll be talking some Big Ten basketball too, but still a couple weeks away. And we talk about some historic undefeated teams and starts in the Big Ten, especially Wisconsin and Minnesota. So we'll get into more of that in just a minute. We'll definitely start, though, at the top with Elise Menaker, BTN anchor, reporter, and all-around utility player for us here at the network. And we'll get into that interview right now. It's Take 10 podcast discussion with Elise. All right, very pleased to be joined in the BTN studio by BTN reporter, anchor. If I leave any out, she can correct me and let me know. It's Elise Menaker. Elise, welcome to the show. This is a appearance that's long overdue, and that's my fault. I'll take responsibility.
No, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, no.
Did I leave any responsibilities out?
Softball analyst.
Okay.
Yeah, host. Sideline reporter, you got it all.
And who knows what lays ahead.
That's right.
First off, just how have you been? How's your fall going? We haven't caught up in a while. Fill me on everything that's going on.
Yeah, fall is now, I'm in the rhythm. It's always a good time of year now because we're in week 8 of the football season. So now you kind of like have your routine going, where you have Mondays, I do this, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, usually travel Thursday, do the football stuff Friday, Saturday. Maybe if I can get home Saturday night, start it all over again Sunday.
Yeah, that's what's nice about football season. It's so structured. Once we get into basketball, I know, at least for me, like the nights just get kind of crazy because anything could pop up on any given night. But we'll talk about football and your schedule and all that a little more in just a little bit here. But before we do that, I want to get into what I kind of always dive into when I talk to sports media professionals or anyone in the industry. And that's just kind of your background and path to where you are right now here at BTN. So just start from the beginning if you could. I know you were a high school sports star, college sports star. Kind of tell me about your path and how media eventually overlapped with your athletics career.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm not that person who knew at like 3 years old that I wanted to be in sports, be in front of the camera. I think my family would say I've always liked being in front of the camera. I'm a middle child. I like the attention too. But it started really an internship in Chicago. I interned at ABC here in Chicago, and I fell in love with what I was doing at that internship. Prior, I actually thought I wanted to be a fashion designer. So I took fashion design classes at the Art Institute. I interned at magazines as well in Chicago. And just through that, I thought, I like it. I was learning at Cornell, where I went undergrad, Cornell University in New York, that I just thought over time, the industry that I'd get into, magazine, would change so much that it wouldn't be what I initially got into, which now, as we're seeing, is true of every social, just media platform. But it was really in that TV internship that I felt this is what I want to do the rest of my life. So actually, right after I graduated from Cornell, I played a pro season of softball in Sweden, and I was there for 4 months. We won a national championship. We played in the European Cup. Phenomenal, fabulous, every word you want to use, experience, and I still am friends with everyone I played with there. I want to go back and visit them. It was really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Bringing up Sweden, just to interject there, have you seen the movie Midsummer?
No, but Midsummer is a huge deal there.
I just watched Midsummer this weekend, and it was in Sweden, and it was freaky. And
is it a scary movie?
Yeah, it's like a thriller kind of.
Interesting.
It's from a horror movie director. He the same guy who directed Hereditary. But
I'm not a huge movie person.
I'm not a big horror movie person, but I recommend Midsummer since you played and lived in Sweden, and it's just like a very twisted movie.
Well, it's interesting because Midsummer in Sweden is when they have 24 hours of sunlight. So the whole country gets off from work, it's an off day, and they just celebrate all day long. And I was there for that.
That's great.
Yeah, so I'm surprised it's a horror movie because it's the complete opposite there. But I like horror movies.
That's kind of what's disorienting about it. It's like it's all in the daylight, and it's
exactly.
It kind of flips.
It's very weird there. But, like 10 o'clock at night, it's broad daylight.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
In the summer.
Getting back to softball, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention your career at Cornell. I don't want to glaze over that. You're from Chicagoland area, we're a high school star here in sports, and then played softball at Cornell. So take me through kind of your reign of terror there and dominance. What were some of your accomplishments you were most proud of there?
We called it beast mode when I went there. No, I think the first thing that comes to mind are the championships that we won. We won back-to-back Ivy League championships my junior and senior year, and that's because, you hear the athletes talk about it all the time, but that's really special because you work really hard for that, not just all season, but in the off-season. And my freshman and sophomore year, we came in second. And so to have that feeling, and we lost on back-to-back home runs or walk-off home runs. These were close games that we essentially, were in it and had won it, but then lost it in the last inning. So that feeling that you feel like all your work, all your hard work paid off. You knew you could do it. You accomplished it. You did it. Your team came together and did it. So many people have to contribute to make that happen throughout the season, and that's really what I remember, the celebrations.
Well, I'm pulling up your bio here, and a career record for doubles, ranks in the top 5 all-time in home runs with 37. It just goes on, and also a 3.74 GPA, which at Cornell, it's pretty good. How did you end up, obviously they recruited you, but how did you end up at Cornell? And just having been to a lot of Big Ten campuses now for your work, how does that whole scene compare to the Big Ten?
Yeah, the Ivy League is different. It's the only Division I conference that doesn't give scholarship. You can have financial aid, but it's different in that realm. And the Ivy League emphasizes, not that another school doesn't, but they say, academics, that comes first, and then athletics is part of it. And I really value that. That's kind of how I feel about things. So the facilities, and it's hard to compare a lot. When I go to these Big Ten schools, I'm surprised. I'm like, wow, this is what they have. We have all of that, but it's just different. That's the only way I can describe it. I'm really proud to have gone to Cornell and to have gone through, to have gone to an Ivy League school and to have played sports at Cornell. But, it is just different. That's the only way I can describe it. I did get recruited, but oddly enough, I actually didn't even know if I was going to play a sport in college. So I played tennis and softball in high school. My team won the state title my junior year. I played singles, and then came top 16 in doubles my senior year. I think my junior year I placed 35th or something in singles. So I actually for a long time was looking at playing tennis and or softball. And like I said, I always put academics or a huge emphasis on academics. So that's really what I was looking at. And if I could play a sport at that school as well, that's kind of how I was looking at everything. But then when Cornell came into the picture, it has both, right? It has the best of both worlds. So I actually did an early decision, and I just, went through the process because I was looking at other places. And in the end, I had the best 4 years of my life at Cornell. Wouldn't change it for the world.
All right, so you get back to the States after Sweden, and you go right into media. I know eventually ended up near my hometown in Central Illinois. So we've kind of talked about that in the past. But take me through what happened after you hung up the cleats.
Yeah, I was ready, I guess you could say. Playing in Sweden really helped. It kind of like capped off my softball career. I knew when I graduated from Cornell, we made it to the NCAA tournament my junior and senior year because we won the Ivy League, and it was so nice to know at that moment. I was sad to be leaving all my teammates and to not be playing softball in that way anymore, but to know that I wasn't done with softball completely was really nice. So then once I had that pro season, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go out into the real world and do what I want to do. After having that internship, I knew I wanted to go into TV. I knew I wanted to go into sports, but I actually started my career in news. So I was a news reporter in Columbia, Missouri at the ABC Fox affiliate, KMIZ, and I was there for 7 months before going back to school. That's when I went to Northwestern, where I got my master's degree in broadcast journalism. So Cornell was a phenomenal education, but I didn't focus and I didn't know journalism. So that's why I wanted to go back to school to learn that at Northwestern. And so then I actually got back into TV after Northwestern. That's when I went to WAND, the NBC affiliate in Decatur. And then from there, I again got a news job. But it was there that I was able to shape and form my sports reel and background. I was open with my news director there that I wanted to do sports. So any sports news story I could do, he let me do. And then at the time, then that's kind of how you shape it and frame it. So I was lucky that he was understanding of that. And I would go out and shoot football highlights for the sports guys. Eventually, I became the morning anchor in Decatur, and it was because of that as well that I got to fill in for the sports guys when they needed a vacation. So I filled in a few times there, put that reel together. I had a sports segment there called Central Illinois Sports Report with Elise Menaker. So you kind of see all the pieces coming together. And it was because of that I was able to make that sports reel and then go to Milwaukee, where I was full-time sports at the NBC affiliate there, and TMJ4 or WTMJ. And there I covered the Packers, Bucks, Brewers, AHL team, the Admirals, and of course Marquette and Wisconsin. So that was really, that was kind of like everything I had worked for, right? Like that's all I wanted to do was be told every day when I go into work, I get to go cover sports in some way. So that was, and to be doing it like covering the Packers, I start during football season. I'm there for Brett Favre getting inducted into the Packers Hall of Fame. To start your sports career like that, it was a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, we talked about this kind of off air, but take me through some of the challenges. And I see this a lot just following some of my peers that have gone off to wherever and become anchors or reporters at certain news stations, sometimes small markets, sometimes news departments or sports departments that are stretched thin. And these are people that, I might have gone to school with or whatever, met along the way. What are some challenges for like a young reporter, whether it's news or sports, reporting in, some of these markets and just kind of doing a lot yourself?
Yeah, that honestly was the challenge that I faced. Like I said, before I went back to Northwestern, I learned journalism on the job in Columbia, Missouri. So when I was, and that's right when like MMJ, as they call it, multimedia journalist or one-man banding was starting to become a thing. And so I had to learn how to shoot on the job. I remember going out with a reporter and he would kind of show me like, this is how you shoot. I didn't even know what cutaways were. I didn't even know what VOs were. That if you're in the broadcast industry, a cutaway are these shots that you see when you shoot, and VOs are the script that you write for certain things. So for me, it was kind of baptism by fire, but honestly, I wouldn't have wanted it any other way because I learned a ton. So that, I think, was the challenge. Adjusting to, we talked about how I thought magazine would change over time, but, adjusting to how TV was changing. I actually started editing on tape. I was one of the last probably stations that still had tape before you go over the SD card. So I would literally shoot on tape, then you edit to another and you press all these buttons, and it's probably so foreign to some younger journalists now, but I think it was being independent and having a schedule that didn't match anybody else's. I think you kind of got used to that in college, having your own class schedule and your own life, and you kind of created your own structure in a sense. But then going out in the real world, and I'm assigned something where I need to go. And when I was reporting in news, I need to go out to a bank robbery, a fire, and knowing that that's my assignment. I have other coworkers who are going to do other things, but this is my assignment for today. I have to get it done. I have to get it done in a timely fashion because we're on deadline. So getting used to the idea that I'm on my own. So once I did learn to shoot by myself, that was a big reason I wanted to go back to Northwestern as well, because it was becoming such an independent industry. I wanted to know that every decision that I was making on the fly was the right one. I never wanted to doubt myself in the field. And I feel it in one-man banding, because you have to know in news, can I step on their lawn? Can I use that interview? Can I use that soundbite? And I didn't want to question that. So I just wanted to know based on my education. So I would say that was, and part of being independent was sometimes doing those things that you never thought you'd be doing, or maybe that you wanted to. Like I said, I always wanted to do sports, but the jobs just weren't there initially. So that's why I took the news jobs, because I was told by a career service mentor at Northwestern, when I got my second job offer at Decatur, it was a news job. And I was like, I just really want sports though. And she said, look, you can either start working now and just gain that experience, or you can sit around and maybe wait for that perfect job to come around and, 3-4 months, however long down the road, but you could already have that experience and be that much farther ahead if you take the Decatur job. So I did, and my parents, they were in the industry, and they have been huge influences. They were producers in Chicago, and they have the same advice. They say experience is experience. News, sports is all the same. And I totally stand by. I would not be the sports reporter I am today without my news background.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I actually didn't realize this until recently, but I'm glad you brought up your parents, because I saw your sister's Twitter account recently.
Yeah.
I didn't know this media runs in the blood, runs in the DNA. She's Showbiz Shelly?
Yeah,
right?
She's Showbiz Shelly in radio.
Do you guys compete? How does this work? What does she do?
That's just it.
How does it all kind of intersect in your family?
Well, it's weird because this was totally unintentional. And in terms of us my parents were never like, you guys should work in TV and radio. In fact, they're always like, just make sure you want to do this. It's a very demanding industry. So my sister, she was at part of the radio station at New Trier, where I went to high school. And that kind of is what kicked off her now radio career. And then with me, it was that internship. I mean, it's just the things that we're drawn to and and my brother, he's the youngest of us. My sister's the oldest. I'm in the middle. And then my brother's a baseball agent. So in some ways, I guess you could say he's tied to media, but he's more it's
in the industry.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just, we don't compete. In fact, it's actually nice to have her in the industry, because a lot of the times I'll go to her and ask questions, because she's faced a lot of the things that I've gone through. So especially with social media today, for instance, she has a big social media following. So I'll, ask her hey, just about posts, or what do you think of these things? And it's nice to have someone going through it, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned, covering the Packers up in Milwaukee. I wanted to ask about your time in Decatur, though, not only because it's 45 minutes from where I grew up. I know it's a Illini station as well down there. You did some research on the Chicago Bears, and with it being their 100th anniversary, I thought it'd be timely to bring it up.
Yeah.
Tell me about what inspired that story and that research. Obviously, for those who don't know, I guess, so not obviously, but for those who don't know, the Bears started down in Decatur when George Halas left Illinois and went to Decatur and kind of started the NFL and got it going. So what did you learn, and how did that story come about?
Yeah, that was something that I knew literally from the moment I got that job. I actually was talking to my dad about it, and he mentioned that hey, that's where the Bears started, the Staleys, and we would talk about how I could do at some point this story, which was how the Bears started. And it just so happened while I was there, they were opening up a museum. It had not yet opened when I did the story, but it was going to open. And that's then became almost the backbone of the story that I created, because the premise is that this museum is where the meetings took place that kind of started the NFL. So I have video in this room that stories say this is where they spoke about it. And I then found relatives of those who were on the Staley's team, and I interviewed them. And it kind of became this big investigative piece, almost, to put together the pieces of all this in this town. Because one of the things that I focused on is when you drive into Decatur on a certain road, there is a sign that says this is the home of the Decatur Staleys. But actually, all there was at the time in that town was that sign. And I thought it was so cool that this is a huge part of this town. And so what's been neat to see is since I did my story, they actually have created a huge mural in downtown Decatur to kind of also recognize the Bears and the Staleys. So it just kind of started again with that news background that I have, that trying to come up with stories that involve sports but maybe aren't necessarily like reporting. And that piece took about like a month or two. I mean, that's a piece where I went out, I got all the interviews myself, shot everything myself, edited it myself, wrote it myself. And so that was like my baby there that I wanted to do before I left.
Yeah, it's cool you did that because it does seem like kind of a buried story. Like you'll see it referenced once in a while when you talk about the history of the Bears, and it seems like Decatur and that, you know, foundation of the franchise almost doesn't get enough attention, and it's cool you kind of brought some light to that.
Thanks.
So finally we get to you here at BTN. How did this opportunity come about? Did you seek it out? Was someone approaching you? And then how's your role evolved at BTN since you got the job?
Yeah, so I actually had been in touch with BTN for a long time. And it's all just about, you know, they say in this industry timing and luck, but it's true. I mean, and any job, that's what it's about. But I knew for a long time that I wanted to work at BTN. So I take pride in the networking that I do, and that's what I did to get this job. I just talked to people over the years, and I'm talking years this took place. And then it just so happened with the timing of my contract in Milwaukee to what was open here that there was a football season coming up and they needed a sideline reporter. So that's kind of how the door opened for me at Big Ten. And I'm from Chicago, so it was always something that, you know, everyone wants to work in their hometown. So that was always an appeal about this network. And I just felt that it was a great next step in my career. And so when that opportunity came up to be a sideline reporter during football season, I knew I couldn't pass it up, and there was the potential there to do some stuff with softball. So it's really nice when you work hard. I mean, I always think hard work pays off, but it's nice when you actually, you know, do see that happen. So from there, I started, like I said, as a sideline reporter for football. I, of course, had anchoring and reporting in my background, so it's always been important for me to be versatile and to keep those skills fresh and not to pigeonhole myself. That's why I even like having the news in my background. And just things kind of snowballed over time where, you know, it's so important to take advantage of your opportunities. And I'm trying to think if I can remember on the spot, like, you know, the first time I did something in studio, it was actually, I filled in for Women's Sports Report. And then from there, I think I filled in a couple of times, and then softball came up and I was our studio analyst. So on top of being calling like games, I was the person in the studio doing the analysis, and again, just kind of get the ball rolling. Then they need someone to fill in hosting a show. You know, I proved that I could do it in the studio for softball. Well, then, so that's kind of how it all came about.
Right, and you know, another way your role has evolved here, you've made some appearances on our digital platforms. You know, kind of where I'm familiar with, and kind of my neck of the woods. And this is your third year here?
Yeah.
Okay, third year. So last year, you started doing a digital segment during football game weeks. Tell us about it. Tell us how it came about, and tell us how it's kind of developed into this, you know, really solid thing now in year two.
So it's interesting because it did not start out as me being like, I want to start a segment and I'm going to call it Big Ten's Got Talent. I was doing a Purdue spring football game. And as prep for those, and for every game I do, I talk to players leading up to. I just call them over the phone and you just kind of get storylines. For spring games, I noticed I learned that like you have more time on the sidelines because it's not a true game. You're not trying to get every report in like right before, you know, they snap the ball. So I try to gather extra content. And I go to David Blau's bio because he's the quarterback at the time. And I noticed just randomly in his bio, they said he does magic. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Like, I want to ask him about that. So when I have him on the phone, I say, by the way, I see you do magic. Like, what is that? He said, I do card tricks. I always carry a deck of cards with me. I go, no way. So I said to him, will you bring that deck of cards? I said, I know you always have it on. He goes, no, I'll have them at the game. So He had remembered, and I saw him before the game, like, the deck of cards? And he's like, yeah, I got it. So then after the game, I see him, and let me tell you, after a spring game, everyone wants to go with their family and they go home, but he was nice enough to stop and say, okay, yeah, I can do this for you. And so it was something I just filmed on my phone. I was with the photographer that I was with on the sidelines. I said, hey, do you mind shooting this really quickly? And it was just simply having David Blau do a card trick for me. And then I thought it was really cool. Yeah. I still to this day would like to know the secret behind it.
David Blau's been on the show before. And we've done several, mini projects like that together. He reminds me of like a 45-year-old in a 20-year-old's body. Like, he's like an old man, and he's so like polished and mature, and it's hilarious that he is
so pleasant to be around. College, I can't describe like a nicer, more genuine person, and that's why I even mentioned this stuff about how he stopped after the game and things, because that's his personality.
Sure.
He wants to help. He likes to be, interact and talk to people and build those relationships. So I always thought that was really nice of him, because his now wife and his mom were there waiting for him. They were like watching as we were doing it. So yeah, it was fun.
So that was the spark, and then how does it turn into a recurring segment?
So then, interestingly enough, I just posted that. I just tweeted out, and it did get a lot of traction. But one of the people who noticed was Tim Brando of Fox. And he says, he tweets at me, he says, Elise, you should start your own Big Ten's Got Talent show. This should make a great, segment. And I thought to myself, that's not a bad idea. And so, because I had a football season under my belt at that point, I thought about the logistics. Like, okay, I know I get out there on Thursdays. I could shoot it on these days. And then once I thought all I did was shoot David Blau's on the phone, so I can just shoot it with my phone. And the quality we know of phones is not bad today. It's good. So then I just each week, in addition to, like I said, I like to talk to players before games. I would just ask in addition. I always did it with the home team, because the away team obviously traveling has a lot less time and they're just more busy. So then I would ask the communications directors that we work with, hey, do you think, I'd explain it to them? And I have to say a lot of credit goes to them, because they're the ones who ask their players. They come up with the ideas. They help me. I may, structure it on site into how we do it and shoot it and things like that. But the idea is really, I noticed Blau say in his bio, sometimes I may notice that, but it's really, the help of them.
Yeah, and to me, this is all kind of like music to my ears, because in my 3 or so years here, we've kind of gone through the same evolution, right? Like, started shooting stuff on our phones on site, and as we'll talk about in a second, the production quality increases once we have a little more resources. And we've always tried to kind of figure out how to get the on-air, faces and voices like yourself, the talent, over to the digital side. And the fact that you kind of went out and just did it, that makes our job a lot easier.
And I like to do it.
Right, and that honestly is the biggest thing, is when talent enjoys it, when they seek it out, or when you propose something to them and they are all about it. It just makes everything so much smoother. And then, after you had a season of this Big Ten's Got Talent under your belt, I assume, I actually don't know how this works, so I'm curious. Were you approached to, up the production quality of it, and since we had the resources on the ground, or how did it become, you have a camera person, and it's kind of this whole production that we're involved with now?
Yeah, what's really cool about the Big Ten is we have people at every campus who are kind of there to shoot things like this. And so I just basically use the resources that we have. This was a goal of mine to do in the first season, to use like a photographer or shooter. But with how I was setting it up, I never could really at that time get enough notice. And I think then, because I did have a year under my belt, everyone kind of knew what I was going for, what it entailed, and how we would get it done. So then again, that goes to a lot of credit working with the SIDs of, asking them, do they have a talent, and then arranging it with them when and how we can do it. So they helped me tremendously in doing it. So by using the resources that Big Ten has, like you said, with the editing, the shooting, the quality that we're able to get out of it, how quickly we can turn it around. It's been amazing.
Year two, we've had some great, it's taking the next step. So everyone, check out Big Ten's Got Talent. Usually comes out on Thursday or Friday, I think. Friday usually, because we shoot it on Thursday. And we've had some big time guests and pieces put out. And Tom Izzo, I don't know if that was technically a Big Ten's Got Talent, but it was an awesome bit you did while you were on campus.
I did, yeah.
You did one that was with a Northwestern player who sculpted fruit.
A fruit carver.
That was wild. Give me some other ones that you've really enjoyed and that stood out for being super unique.
The first ones stand out because it was like, that's when it was, I'm trying to do this. And so there were a lot of singers, which honestly, like all the singers we have been amazing. I just had a ukulele player at Purdue.
You got John Legend's attention?
John Legend's attention because we had a piano player at Michigan State.
So he responded on social media?
Yeah, he said it sounds great. Yeah, and I was like, hey, sounds great to me too. What else? Oh, we had someone who smoked, I think it was brisket at Penn State.
Okay. Glad you said brisket there, because you could have gone anywhere. Player who smoked, right?
Yeah. Sorry, that was not the right place to pause.
No, you're good.
But yeah, and that's kind of been the cool part.
James Franklin got involved with that.
Yeah,
they get a kick out of it.
And since we have a shooter, it's opened up the doors too. Like, because if I'm shooting smoking brisket on my phone, it's a lot more challenging.
Sure, yeah, and the editing.
Yeah, I don't even quite frankly know I'd be able to do it.
Yeah, it has been good as well. So. Any sneak previews of what's coming up? Where are you going this weekend?
Yeah, this weekend it's tough. So I am back at Rutgers. They're playing Minnesota.
Because you were at Rutgers recently.
Yeah, right. So this is now the time of the year where, and I noticed this even in my first season, when I start to repeat home teams or just repeat teams in general, it gets more difficult. Because like I said, it takes effort and time to put together. Sure. So I actually don't know if I will have one for the first time.
I'll try and think of something, like, it might be short notice, but that's kind of the same type of approach we take when we go out to every school in the bus tour. Like, we're trying to find some unique talent.
Yeah.
So these requests are not new, I don't think, for the SIDs. So I'm trying to think if we had anything, but I'll let you know if something.
Yeah, I would appreciate it.
We'll have to see and be able to look.
But the last time at Rutgers, I had someone design a Big Ten's Got Talent logo.
Yeah,
he's an art major and he did a great job. I asked him on the spot, so that was probably the most impressive thing to me is he just comes up with it on the spot.
So year 3, then you're gonna have to actually use that logo in the.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
All right. Before we wrap up, Elise, I want you to take me through kind of what a game week is like with your crew, with balancing your responsibilities here in the studio, and just the overall experience of going on the road, maybe getting dinner, maybe getting acclimated to a new campus. What's kind of how does it all fall in place for you week to week?
What's nice now is as I'm in year 3, everything becomes more familiar. So a typical week, usually Mondays and Tuesdays are more my prep days where I kind of look at the team notes. I listen to the press conferences from the coaches, and that's stuff where I do, more what I want to do, like for the game to get myself ready. That's where I'll maybe reach out to the SIDs and ask to, can I get a couple of players on the phone? So the idea is, for me, at least the way I see it as a sideline reporter, I'm trying to find the stories of the teams going in that I could potentially do reports on during the game. So that's why I talk to players, what I just little tidbits from the press conferences, and by going through the notes and just doing your research, you just have a better understanding of what the team, the background of the team, what's the story going in, what do I need to know about these two teams. And then Wednesday, usually we have our conference call with the away coaches, and you talk to the head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. Thursday is a travel day. If I can, I do the Big Ten's Got Talent on those days. And then Friday, if I can't do it Thursday, I'll do Big Ten's Got Talent, and then we meet with the home coaches. Okay. So same thing. Head coach, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, and a lot of times we'll have to record things for the next day, and then Saturday is game day. So game day, I like to get to the field early, but maybe because I have to get interviews, I have to record things, and then the game itself happens, and when the minute the game is done, after I do my post-game interviews, that's it. Yeah. And you go home.
Are you with Brandon?
Yeah, Brandon Godden and James Laurinaitis.
Brandon also has been on the show.
Oh, wow.
Nice James is not. I got to get him on.
Yeah, next up.
So what's the crew like? Do you guys ever hang out or have time to relax outside of the broadcast?
My crew, we love each other. We love to hang out. We love to eat. We love to go to dinner. Did Brandon Godden tell you about his dessert obsession?
I don't think so. He was on a year and a half ago, so maybe, and I forgot, but
I might be exposing him, but he loves dessert, loves ice cream, so it's kind of rubbed off on, I'll admit, me. But we go to dinner usually together on Friday nights, and if we're all there like Thursday nights, but usually because we can get in at different times on Thursdays. But that's probably one of my favorite parts about traveling for football is that I get to see them. You're gonna see those familiar faces. You're not just going out there alone, and we have a good time together. It's you bond because you see each other every weekend, right, and you get this schedule going, and you just look forward to it.
All right, a few wrap-up questions. First of all, saw inside the new studio, or not new studio, but we've got a new desk.
Yeah, new set
in our studio here in Chicago. I think it's giant. Have you sat at it yet?
It actually feels smaller than the old one, but not in a bad way. It's like very comfortable.
Okay,
yeah,
I got you.
Because the old desk was very high.
Right.
So I just walk up the steps. You used to have get on a box to stand up and.
So I think on TV it looks way bigger just because it's stretched.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I can see that.
It's like a Star Wars set. That's what it reminds me of.
But it's cool, and so I have to make sure I don't slouch on air. So these chairs that we have now, I feel like I'm sitting up straighter.
Okay.
So
the posture's much better.
It was Awesome. I hope.
All right, let's take it outside the studio. What kind of hobbies do you have outside? I mean, I know you're an athlete, so maybe you stay active, I'm sure. Do you have any shows, any podcasts you listen to? What's going on when you do have that free time?
I love to work out. Spend a lot of time at the gym. I love reality TV. I am not ashamed of it. It's not even a guilty pleasure. I just enjoy it. I am 90% of the time probably watching everything on Bravo. Vanderpump Rules is my favorite.
I've heard of that one. I've never seen it.
This is where everyone's probably like, what?
The other shows on Bravo that I think Project Runway, Kathy Griffin, shows like that.
Well, I like, The Real Housewives and gosh, why am I forgetting everything now? Below Deck.
The big thing, I think the reality show I got into the deepest.
Southern Charm?
No, the big show was when I was in high school. It was Jersey Shore.
Oh, I watched that.
Yeah. So
I love reality TV.
That would be like a holiday every week. We would watch that.
Yeah, Gym Tan Laundry. Yeah, all that stuff.
I actually saw Pauly D at the airport once in Philly.
And they're easy to spot. They still look the same.
Exactly.
I also 90 Day Fiancé. Have you ever seen that one?
I haven't.
That's Say Yes to the Dress.
I know the concept though. Yeah. See.
Yeah. So TLC, HGTV, and Bravo. That's my jam.
Okay. What about? The reason I asked this is because there were YouTube stars on the University of Illinois campus yesterday, and I saw all these Snapchats and Instagrams of mobs of people chasing after these YouTube stars and people I've barely heard of.
Okay.
I don't know if you're into YouTube, the vloggers, the vlogging scene.
I'm not. I don't even have Netflix.
Okay.
Hence why I say I watch these things. I actually just love watching it, so I feel like I don't need Netflix. I think everyone would disagree with me. Never seen Game of Thrones. I don't watch
I haven't seen Game of Thrones either.
Really?
And the vlog scene I think is way younger than both of us. It's college students maybe the cutoff, and then teenagers. But I'm not into it.
I'm not into that. I feel like could I get into it? I don't think
so. I don't know. It's from what I've seen, it's literally people holding up selfie cameras, and it's very highly produced, but they make it seem like you're in their home, and they just do goofy stuff. I don't know. It's not. I don't find it funny, but clearly students at our Big Ten campuses do, and they can draw crowds. And I'm glad that you mentioned Netflix, because that was one of my questions. And you said you don't have an account. Do you even borrow passwords from anyone? You're just completely off it?
No, my sister I think has an account, and I think my brother borrows hers. But I genuinely I love my reality TV.
You're in too deep.
Yeah, I go home, it's either sports or reality TV. Yeah, I'm in way too deep. I feel connected to all of these people. These are my friends who I watch. That's the level it's gotten to. That makes me sound so so sad. But I love it. Yeah.
It's not that different than sports. It's competition. You feel connected to them. I see how it works.
Sure.
All right. Last question. Important question. We're in the middle of spooky season right now, 2 weeks to Halloween. Are you dressing up as anything for Halloween? If so, what are you going to be?
Okay, I've thought about it. I don't know if I'm dressing up because isn't Halloween on a Thursday this year?
It's in a weird spot. It's in between. There's 2 weekends. I don't even know which one would be the proper one to celebrate it because
I know that's why
one weekend's 27th, the next is the 2nd.
It's that tough one. Yeah, you're do I dress up both weekends? Yeah. One of them you don't want to be that weirdo who guessed wrong and then no one else is dressed up and you are. Right. I was thinking if I dressed up as Selena. I love the movie Selena, and I love just her as a singer, and like who she was. So that was a thought. But honestly,
wait, hold on, Selena. Are we talking Selena Gomez?
No,
Selena?
sorry, like Selena, like when J-Lo.
Am I bad for not knowing who that is?
No,
okay.
Actually, someone else didn't know either.
When you say Selena, like my generation thinks.
Yeah,
I
don't even think of that. I mean, I get it, but because I'm thinking of the person.
So.
Yeah, remember the J-Lo movie?
No.
Oh wow. Okay. Well,
I'll have to put it on my list.
Yeah, maybe I should have said I was going to be like a bumblebee or something. But
just don't say softball player, because whenever anyone dresses up as the sport they played, it's always. I
did that. I actually didn't like. I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. But growing up, I'm not a big like candy person, so I didn't like to trick or treat. And as like just to go trick or treating, I went around and I put my softball uniform on and got candy, and I think my family ate it.
I did the same thing, and I always thought like I knew deep down it was lame, but I was like just lazy and would put my sport, my baseball or basketball uniform on. And
that's exactly what it came to.
All right, well, we'll have to see. We'll figure it out. I always leave Halloween to the last minute anyway. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, clearly I am as well.
That could be a Big Ten's Got Talent idea. You could
Halloween
work
costume?
Halloween in somehow.
Yeah, maybe someone can like make a costume.
See? This
Done.
podcast is
so easy. Now the key is.
All right, Elise, I've taken enough of your time. Thanks so much. Somehow we didn't get kicked out of this room. I know there's a volleyball broadcast
going
to go on shortly here. So I will let you go. I appreciate you taking some time. And even though this is long overdue, we'll have to have you on again soon. I know. Good time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, have a good rest of the season, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, thanks once again to Elise for joining me. Really appreciate her taking some time. Like I said, should have had her on a long time ago. I don't know how I haven't yet, but better late than never. And appreciate all her hard work for the network. All right, moving along now to Harold Shelton and his weekly Stat Head segment. We'll go in-depth behind the numbers, whatever you want to call it, into Big Ten sports, and especially this week and every week this time of year, Big Ten football. So we'll toss it over to H, discuss the past weekend of Big Ten football, and look ahead to the matchups awaiting us on Friday and Saturday this weekend. H will take it from here. His segment starts right now. All right, we're glad to be back in the lab here. H, had to take a week off last week. That was my fault. I had a scheduling gap with the guests, but we're back at it now. How's your time off?
It was good. The grind still was going, but I hate missing last week, but glad to be back this week.
I feel much less informed when I don't talk to you on a weekly basis. So maybe we should just go out for coffee next time there's a gap in the schedule.
Yeah, we can make that work. Starbucks down the street.
Since we talked last, I hate to say, from your perspective, it was a tough 2-week stretch for your Spartans. Let's just kind of recap what went wrong since we last talked. I know you were a little optimistic they could potentially hang with Ohio State. That game wasn't that close, and then Wisconsin was even worse. So diagnose what went wrong.
Yeah, I didn't think they'd beat Ohio State. I wondered if they would stay around. I know we talked about that second quarter punch and how they needed to withstand that. They did not, and so that's the reason they were down 17 and never really got back in the game. The Wisconsin one probably surprised me more. I thought that was a better matchup for them, more of a phone booth game. Jonathan Taylor against that really good front seven. The defense stopped Taylor but got no pressure on Jack Cohn. He was able to deliver the ball when he wanted, where he wanted. That part was definitely surprising, but, all credit to Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin's one of 4 undefeated teams in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. That's pretty historic, right?
Yeah. It's funny, people start 6-0 all the time, but, to have 4 in one league seemed kind of rare, and then you look and you're like, oh, this hasn't happened in over 100 years. 1904 is the last time you had at least 4 Big Ten teams start 6-0, and it's a possibility that all of those teams can win this week too. So it could be very interesting.
Yeah, that was back when Chicago was in the Big Ten.
Chicago's in it.
Maroons.
It was Chicago, Illinois, I think Minnesota back then was really good as well.
Yeah, another significant achievement that we'll stick with Wisconsin that the Badgers have accomplished is this stretch of shutouts. 4 in the first 6 games. Give me some background on that and how that matches up with past teams.
Yeah, the Badgers are really making us work, right? Like,
Right.
There's a lot of digging that we have to do, and Twitter helps because we've got some friends over at Stats and Info, some friends at Stats, and so you can kind of pick and choose some of the best stuff. But I will say, from what we've seen, they're the first FBS team with 4 shutouts in the first 6 games of a season since Oklahoma in 1967. The first Big Ten team to do it since Minnesota in 1962. They're the first Big Ten team, period, with 4 shutouts in the season since Michigan in 1978. So the stuff that they're doing right now is crazy. I mean, they've only allowed 29 points so far. It's the fewest through 6 games by FBS team since Florida State in 1993. So, I mean, you're talking, the elite of elite, very, very rarefied air that this Badgers defense is playing in right now.
Yeah, I mean, that showdown with Ohio State, is it next week?
Next week.
Yeah, that's one we can't really help looking ahead to, but we'll try and keep it on topic for now. Their opponent in the West that is kind of challenging them a little bit, or at least a team to keep an eye on if you're the Badgers, is Minnesota. I was a little skeptical of the Gophers in the first 3-4 weeks of the season, and I think now they have earned their way out of anyone's skepticism. They still haven't beaten any great teams, but they're at least winning the way great teams are supposed to. And credit to them for surviving those first 3 really close games and now kind of hitting stride a little bit. Is it the defense that's changed, do you think? I mean, they shut out Nebraska. Nebraska had their backup quarterback in, but they were always kind of scoring points. It seems to me like the defense is what stepped up now. Yeah,
the defense certainly helped. And I know early on Kamal Martin missed some time. So he missed that South Dakota State game, and you can kind of see how much they missed him. I will say that I think they've become a little bit more balanced on offense, and I think that's been a bigger deal. We'll see if that changes as they get to Penn State in a couple of weeks. But the first 4 weeks it was all about Tanner Morgan and throwing it around to those receivers. In the last 2 weeks they've been able to get Rodney Smith going. Shannon Brooks is back healthy. Then they added Ibrahim back. He ran for 3 touchdowns against Nebraska. And so now you got that 3-headed monster at running back and receiver. If Tanner Morgan gets time to throw, if that offensive line plays well, they're going to be a tough out.
Yeah, a lot of tools in that offense for P.J. Fleck and a lot of people for Tanner Morgan to distribute the ball to. I guess the other game of note before we move on from this past weekend to talk about is Penn State-Iowa. It felt like Penn State kind of controlled that whole game, and if not for a controversial call in the goal line, it might not have been as close as it was. Penn State ended up winning 17-12 over the Hawkeyes. Penn State, to me, has shown all the makings of a legit team. To me, now, the interesting thing to watch will be, can they make their entire season relevant on a national stage? Like the last 2 years, they've kind of fallen off the map a little bit because they lost to Ohio State in week 8 or 9 or whatever it's been. And then you just kind of forget about them because they're out of the college football playoff race. And sure, they're still a very good team in the Big Ten, but, they're not in any of the college football playoff ranking shows being discussed as a potential CFP contender. So do you think they are at the level, or at least kind of close to the stratosphere of Wisconsin and Ohio State?
Yeah, it feels kind of weird to say a team that's 7th in the country is flying under the radar, but it kind of seems like it is with them. I think that, that win at Iowa kind of exercised some demons, gets the monkey off the back for James Franklin. He had never won a road game against a ranked team. He was 0 of 11, 0 of 5 at Vandy, 0 and 6 at Penn State.
I didn't realize that Vandy won.
So he finally got that off his back. And now you get a really tough schedule. I mean, that game started, a brutal stretch where you got Michigan this week. You're at Michigan State next week. You got an off week, and then you're at Minnesota. You still got the game in Columbus later in the year. So, I mean, they're definitely going to have their chances to make some waves and, potentially get into that top 4. He got some more demons to exercise. I mean, he's 1-4 against Michigan. He's 1-4 against Michigan State. He's 1-4 against Ohio State. And so, if you're going to find a way to turn it around, this is a good time to do it.
So let's start our conversation looking ahead to this weekend with Michigan and Penn State. Wolverines escaped Illinois with a little bit of a scare. They kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit and gave up almost a big lead completely. So I don't know how good Michigan fans are feeling about that one. But they remain 5-1. Penn State's still undefeated. How do you see that one playing out? And I don't think many envision it playing out like it did last year when Michigan absolutely rolled them.
Yeah, that series has been really weird. I mean, the home team has basically just traded blowouts the last 3 years. In 16, the year Penn State actually won the league, they got throttled, 49-10 in Ann Arbor. That was the last time they lost in the regular season.
Yep.
The year after that, white out, under the lights. Saquon goes 80 right away.
Sure.
They blow Michigan out of the water. Last year, Michigan returns the favors, 42-7. So, I mean, you've literally had nothing but blowouts. I can't think of the last time that this game was close. I think it was 2014 maybe was Franklin's first year when neither team was very good. So hopefully we get a good game this weekend. It's a weird thing because people have been kind of trashing Michigan, and they're still 5-1. They got a lot of stuff in front of them. The spread is lower than you would think based on how people are talking about Penn State and how great they are and how much Michigan's struggling. The line's only a little over a touchdown on the road. So I think that's a little interesting. I do think Penn State should win the game, but I think Michigan has a big chance to make a statement.
Yeah, with that being said, I mean, Michigan has an opportunity, to keep everything in front of them. But if they lose, a lot of those stakes theoretically become removed because it'll be hard to jump Penn State if you lose to them. And, thinking about Ohio State down the road, it's hard to imagine Ohio State losing more than one game until that meeting. So, lose now and a lot of those incentives fade a little bit.
Yeah, not just that. I mean, they'd be 2 games back in the division from Ohio State and Penn State since they already lost to Wisconsin. So this game is pivotal if they want to get to Indy. They'd have, 4 conference games left after this. Kind of hard to imagine that they'd be able to make up that much ground against the 2 teams that would be above them in the East.
Right. So the slate drops off after that top 25 game, the top 20 game for sure. But there are some games that have some implications. Indiana and Maryland is one that's interesting just because of the bowl implications there. Both teams are looking to get back to a bowl, obviously. You would think Indiana has the edge there, but it is at Maryland. Full disclosure, I haven't been able to watch much of Indiana in the last few weeks. How are they looking? I know Penix, the quarterback, is back and is back from injury from earlier this year. And Maryland's coming off a tough loss at Purdue. So what are you expecting out of that game?
Penix, he was great, in East Lansing, had the 20 straight completions. It was a game they probably should have won. If they do, they might be right outside the top 25 at this point. But, they're a 4-2 team. Only losses, to Ohio State, Michigan State. They've blown out everybody else. I mean, they've played really, really well so far. Defense has been really good. Stevie Scott finally got on track, but again,
I didn't realize until last weekend how quiet he's been this year.
Yeah,
because he was on our bus and the bus tour, and then I looked at the stats and it's like he's got 400 or 500 yards this year, maybe not even that. Maybe it was 200 or 300, and it was, just relatively quiet, especially considering his breakout last year. So, what does he need to do to get going?
Well, I think a lot of it has been the line. They've definitely struggled to run block against the better teams, and the Ohio State game, they pretty much couldn't run it at all. And once they got behind, they pretty much abandoned it. Otherwise, they've blown teams out, so that it hasn't been a need for him to play, as much in the second half. They've killed Rutgers, they've killed Eastern Illinois, they've killed UConn, and so it hasn't really been a lot of chances for Scott to get going for a full game.
Right.
This could be one of those. We saw what Purdue did to Maryland last week. They dropped 40 on them. Penix has some pretty good weapons at receiver with Whop Phillier and Nick Westbrook, and so if Jack Plummer can throw for over 400 and have all of those freshmen score touchdowns against that defense, I think Indiana might be able to do something similar.
Yeah, Maryland, I think, is feeling the strain of first-year coach and all the adjustments that go into that whole process, and it just seems to be kind of weighing them down at this point. But yeah, Indiana, I mean, the way we kind of distribute the games on every Saturday, we'll try and have some of our staff have their eyes on a certain game, and for whatever reason, I haven't been watching Indiana as much, but you're right, they've quietly put together a really nice resume and taking care of business. Now the challenge is going to be, can they make that leap that we've kind of talked about whenever we really talk about them in a big game, because no shame in losing to Ohio State, but that game was not competitive. So We'll see with them.
Yeah, every year Indiana seems to kind of have a game where they shouldn't lose, and then it winds up costing them bowl eligibility, right? So, like last year, they were at Minnesota. Minnesota was really struggling at the time. It was the first time Tanner Morgan started a game. They were, they pretty much went through the motions, came back, took the lead, gave it away late.
Right.
Then you lose to Purdue and you're 5-7. 2 years ago, it was a game at Maryland they should have won.
Mm-hmm.
Maryland had the fourth-string quarterback in. They score 42 points. You lose the game. You're 5-6. You play Purdue and you lose. Like this is a game where Indiana needs to win to kind of have some cushion.
A little bit.
Exactly, because you still got Penn State and Michigan on the schedule. Like this is a game where you need to go ahead and put it in the win column.
One interesting thing, looking at recent history, Iowa losing to Purdue the last 2 years. That's something that obviously Purdue was on the come up the last 2 years and had the rise of Jeff Brom and the program came back to respectability for sure. But still, you think Iowa, you think that they would have at least split. So I have to imagine they have the edge against Purdue, just Purdue being banged up. But it looks like Purdue might have found something finally with Plummer kind of getting used to the offense there.
I like their future a lot. I don't know if that necessarily means this Saturday, but the receivers they have. I mean, outside of Rondell Moore, he's been out, but the fact that David Bell's gotten going, Milton Wright's gotten going. They got a nice running back in King Roux. So, they had 4 freshmen score touchdowns in the first half last week against Maryland. So, that just kind of goes to show, like, the future could be bright there.
Right.
They have some good skill guys.
Silver lining of the injuries is that guys can step up, get reps,
exactly,
and build toward the future. And what's the word on Moore? Is there any prognosis for when he's getting back? Like, he's keeping it close to the vest.
I'd be surprised if he played anytime soon. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if that's an injury that you want to rush back, especially if you're not really playing for a lot.
Sure.
But, that's just my opinion. I know Brom has kind of spoken out that it was going to be week to week, and I guess he's a little less optimistic now. What that actually means for the rest of the season remains to be seen.
All right. Well, we talked about Ohio State and Wisconsin, not this upcoming weekend, but the next one. The other big matchup will be Wisconsin-Minnesota. It looks like those two will probably face off for the West, unless Iowa has something to say about it. So those two teams this weekend just look to take care of business, keep it moving. Wisconsin's got Illinois, Minnesota's got Rutgers. I don't envision those teams, rising up and shocking the world, but stranger things have happened, I guess. So Wisconsin and Minnesota just seem to be on that collision path for the Axe and then for the berth in Indy.
Yeah, see, I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Minnesota because they should win the next 2 games to get to 8-0. But then November gets real, and then we'll find out a lot about them because they still get Penn State, they still get Iowa, they still get Wisconsin. And so we're going to find out a lot more, if, let's say, Wisconsin does lose to Ohio State next week and Minnesota loses to Penn State and Iowa, that game could still decide the West at the end because Minnesota, if they beat Wisconsin, would have a tiebreaker. Hopefully we get a situation where that is a winner-take-all game. It'd be great if it was on BTN. We'll see.
Right.
We know Ohio State, Michigan will obviously be on Fox, but hopefully we get the Axe game, and that'd be awesome.
Right, absolutely. And Iowa's 2 losses at this point, correct?
Yeah.
So they would have to beat Minnesota and not necessarily Wisconsin, but to get to Indy, it would take some work, right?
They're going to need Wisconsin to lose twice. Now, luckily, I guess it depends because if they lose next week at Ohio State, they still play Wisconsin.
True.
And so, I would say if Iowa, can get to November, still with 2 losses, everything's still in front of them.
Cool. And that reminds me, bringing up Ohio State, almost forgot. Friday night matchup coming up, Ohio State at Northwestern. Northwestern's having a tough year. Ohio State, I don't believe, is played on Friday night or even off. I can't even remember them playing off. Or did they play Indiana on a Thursday before?
That was a Thursday.
Yeah.
So.
Instead of Northwestern, they played on the Thursday last year. So, both teams have played outside of the normal routine before, but neither team has played on a Friday.
Right, yeah. Shout out to Jerry Emick for Ohio State for putting that in the notes. That's the first time they're playing a regular season game on a Friday since 1959.
Wow, okay.
It's a very, very long time ago. Obviously, this is going to be probably a good thing for Ohio State because you get the extra day to prepare for Wisconsin since you're going to be done, a day earlier. This game shouldn't be close, I wouldn't think, but Northwestern has found ways to muddy games up before. They haven't really played that much this decade, but the 3 times that they have, it's been a game in the fourth quarter. It's been a one-possession game. Sure. 2013, Northwestern probably should have won the game.
That was the game day game?
That was the game day game. Gave it away late. They were in Columbus in 2016. It was a 4-point game. Ohio State kind of just had to survive that one. And even last year, Ohio State jumped out to the big first-half lead in Indy in the championship game. Northwestern comes back. It's a 7-point game with 10 minutes left. And you're like, hey, let's see what happens. Ohio State, scored a couple touchdowns late to put it away. But, I just don't know if Northwestern can move the ball well enough to keep up.
Yeah, and remember, it's Friday night. I always see
on BTN now.
Exactly. We announced that yet? I think we have. It's been announced.
I know Bruce Feldman did.
So secret cat's out of the bag there. So check it out on BTN. I know those games on Friday night, especially in my Twitter experience, catches the eyes and attention of a lot of people and people who generally wouldn't be watching Big Ten football on Saturdays. So I think it's a cool thing. I think it'll be fun. I'll be there. So excited to get to my first game at Northwestern. Never been to a football game there.
Dress warm.
I'll bundle up. That lakefront breeze is no joke, and I might have to borrow some of your wardrobe for that. H, I know you got.
I got the park. I got the gloves.
You got pea coats on deck.
All day long.
All right, H, appreciate your time, and we'll be back at it next week. Back in the saddle. Take care until then.
Sounds good, man. Looking forward to it.
All right. All right, thanks once again to Harold and Elise for joining me and making this episode what it is. Thanks, as always, to Wes White, Julie Bronder, who have a hand in producing the show. Thanks, as always, to everyone for listening. And quick reminder, if you are listening and you've not subscribed on one of our platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Podbean, or even YouTube, you can find us on YouTube as well in the Big Ten Network YouTube channel. There's a playlist for the Take 10 podcast. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and drop a favorable rating if you like the show. Keep those unfavorable ratings in your back pocket. We don't need them here. For real, thanks as always to everyone out there for tuning in. Appreciate it. If it's your first time or if you tune in every week, appreciate it across the board. And we'll talk to you next time here on the Take 10 podcast.